Moving on quickly to the next panel, and I'll invite Kadi to come and invite her panelists. And as Kadi comes, Kadi has also been to Nairobi. At least she came when there was no flooding. So I don't know, what was your experience in Nairobi?
Well, it was a nice break from Estonian autumn, first of all. It was in September. It was already rainy and cold here, so it was a lot of warmth to go through winter. But yeah, in Kenya, I met a lot of Greentech entrepreneurs and some support organizations there. It was really insightful to see what are the trends there. And I hope with the panel we can delve into that now. So I will call to the stage first, please, Nancy. So Nancy is working for the Moi University and is a textile researcher. Please have a seat. Welcome. Then we have Marem with us, who is the lead African 500 Global. And we will hear more about what you're doing at 500 Global. Thank you for coming and joining us. And then we have Robin, who is from eAgronom, which is an Estonian company working in different African countries. Welcome, Robin, as well. Thank you. But before we go into our panel discussion, we have someone joining us online. So it's Ariane Labat, who is working for the European Commission. She is the head of unit for science, technology, innovation, and digitalization. And let's hear what she has to say for the panel.
Good day, colleagues. It's my great pleasure to join you online for this very interesting panel. Thank you again for the organizer of the Africa Business Forum in Tallinn 2024. I'm sorry I couldn't join in person, but nonetheless, I will offer you some thoughts coming from DG International Partnership, Science, Technology, Innovation, and Digitalization unit. Greentech as a shared ambition definitely is an exciting topic for the panel. So from our side, from Team Europe side, let me offer you 3 examples how we invest and believe in international cooperation, in driving innovation together, and in supporting a global twin transition that works for people and leaves no one behind. First, why we want to do this. We know there is a global infrastructure gap, infrastructure investment gap, and particularly in Africa. This is what our leaders ask us to look into, to bridge this gap with innovative approaches and innovative partnerships. From the European side, our value proposition to address this infrastructure gap is to work through Global Gateway offer for partnership. The Global Gateway offer is really focused on the priorities set by the Africa-EU leaders, namely digital transition, transport connectivity, climate and energy, and also mainstreaming education and research throughout everything we do, plus health also, of course, sorry. So this is really our philosophy. We are coming together, the European Union, the member state like Estonia, who is welcoming us today, and we are coming as public sector together with our businesses, our financial institutions, and more broadly, our civil society and academia. We are coming to work together with African partners on partnership that makes a difference, that have an impact on the ground, to build faster, better, some key infrastructure. Some examples, as I promised. First example, we invest into developing the Digital Green Innovation Initiative together with member states. This is an initiative that we are busy designing, preparing contracts, but in the spirit. And very, very soon on the ground, it will be an initiative to develop smart innovation on the ground through SME boost, through hackathons, and really betting on the green and digital technology of future, as well as greening the digital sector. Secondly, we invest in the European programs for space, both Earth observation and satellite navigation. And these programs are heavily invested in as well as regards the use cases in Africa and building the capacities through the AUC of the local partners to use these different space capabilities. This is definitely already used by some of you to manage your forests, your inland waterways transport, to manage your fleet of renewable energy and your future investment in this space. We really layer the strength of the European assets, the Copernicus system, GMES for Africa, and through that we develop together with you some partnership to roll out more services, more innovation locally. Thirdly, we as Team Europe, we believe a lot in bridging the digital divide, because that's a way to leapfrog multiple other sectors of the economies in Africa to faster growth, to greater prosperity. We do that in partnership with our African partners to really invest in key connectivity links, be it subsea cables or last mile innovation. And when we do that, we have definitely an approach that is sustainable, meaning we look at the twin transition opportunities and we look into investing into infrastructure that are energy efficient and clean, and in turn unlocking some local services that are needed for clean tech business to grow. These are just snapshots into what we are doing and what we want to do more and more with African partners. I look forward to meeting you in person to multiple other events, and I'm again very thankful to the organizer of the Africa Business Forum in Tallinn to allow me to be with you indirectly. Thank you.
Thanks to Ariane for this introduction. But without further ado, let's dive into how one can do or build sustainable business, a sustainable economy, really, in Africa. Let's look at what our panelists are doing in this field. Let's start with you, perhaps, Marem. Can you tell us what you're doing at 500 Global and how is it relating to sustainable economy?
Sure. So 500 Global is a primarily US-based venture capital fund. We started in Silicon Valley. Now it's been about 14 years ago. And our focus as a venture capital firm is how do we invest in sustainable companies across the globe? And when we say sustainable, first, that means two things. Sustainable financially, so companies that are able to actually generate sustainable profit, as well as sustainable in terms of the positive contribution to the ecosystem. So today, we primarily invest in about 88 countries across the globe. Our focus on emerging markets makes it so that we come across companies in climate and sustainability quite often. And that is because today what we're especially realizing in some of these markets is that sustainability really is a complementary effect to profitability. And even if you want to find profitable businesses, a lot of the ones that are successful are the ones that can be sustainable over the long term.
Can you tell us, is it possible to invest, make returns, and for it to be sustainable?
That's what we get paid for.
Awesome. But Nancy, can you tell us what you're doing? So you're a textile researcher at my university. What do you do and what is your relation to sustainability in your job?
Okay, thank you. At my university, we do a lot of research around sustainability in the area of textile and fashion. First, at the research stage, we encourage the students to do research that incorporates green technologies. So even if it's textile surface modification or anything related to that, we encourage the use of green methods like plant extracts and any other techniques that don't pollute the environment. And then now also extending to other projects that we have a project which works with textile firms to encourage them to incorporate eco-innovation strategies in their manufacturing. You see, textiles pollutes, it's one of the largest polluters globally. So for us to be able to ensure that we reduce that, we are working with with small to medium companies to guide them on how they can incorporate eco-innovation strategies in their businesses. And then we also have another project that we are working with the Estonia Academy of Arts. This one now is on transferring up-made knowledge to Kenya. So we are working with the Estonia Academy of Arts as well as the Stockholm Environment Institute in Tallinn. So in that project now, we are encouraging the upcycling of post-industrial waste. So we get expertise from ECA. They come to Kenya, they train us, and then we are also working with a company that is linked to Moi University, Rivertech. So we are using that post-industrial waste to be able to come up with products to add value to that post-industrial waste. And then in that line also, yeah, there's a lot. We've even had students coming from ECA to come and do some designs and train people at Rivertech on how to be able to add value to that. So there's a lot of sustainability going around.
It's great to hear this. Not only research, but you're working on real projects that come to the real economy. So it's not only on paper.
Yes.
It becomes a reality.
Yes.
Robin, so you're an Estonian entrepreneur. What are you doing in this panel first? But tell us about what is your sustainable solution and what are you doing in African countries?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So my name is Robin, and I'm coming from the farming family. So my father has 1,400 hectare organic grain farm, and my grandfather has same-sized conventional grain farm. So all my life I have been raised in the middle of those two worlds. But I ended up studying computer science, and then in 2016, my father needed a tool to manage our family farm. And since we didn't have anything good on the market at the time, I ended up building something for only our family farm, and then other farmers said that they want to start using it as well. And next thing you know, we have, well, today more than 2 million hectares managed with this tool. Now, about the sustainability and Africa. In the beginning, it was really a farm management tool, but already in the very first prototype, we had something called humus balance calculator. So humus is the richest part of the soil, and half of humus is carbon. And we had no business idea behind this or anything. We just wanted to communicate to farmers that every decision that they take also is influencing their soil. And then fast forward to, I think it was something like 2021, when we already had many farmers on board. We were looking for the next step for our company. And some companies, other big corporations, started approaching us saying that, hey, they have done a lot to reduce their emissions, but it's impossible to reach to zero emissions, and they want to compensate for the emissions that are left. And since we work with farmers, maybe we can figure something out. Farmers changing practices, storing more carbon in the soil, and they can kind of sponsor this activity. So we ended up launching our initially carbon offsetting program in 2021 summer, where farmers are changing practices, storing more carbon in the soil, and companies corporations compensating their emissions by supporting those farmers. But then soon we've realized, first of all, that it's way more than offsetting. So we work with food companies to help them to reduce emissions in their value chain. We work with banks to help them to give out green loans to farmers who apply sustainable practices. And then, I wanted to say recently, but it's certainly more than a year ago, we entered also African market. So we're working with around 200,000 landowners in Tanzania, Kenya, and Rwanda, and want to continue working with African farmers to improve soils in their countries, and also at the same time helping to, well, slow down the climate change as much as we can by storing more carbon in the soil.
It's good to hear. So we're really able to cover quite a few African countries, so we don't have to stick to one. I would really like to know, what are the past year's trends that you see? Perhaps, Marem, you can look at it from an investor's perspective. What has happened in the clean tech entrepreneurship or companies in Africa?
So when we look at the continent today, and I think it's important to now see that there is now a positive excitement around bringing in new technologies on the continent today in a way that wasn't the case 10 years ago. So today, if you look at especially the bigger markets, which are obviously, when we talk about the big four, it includes Nigeria, Egypt, South Africa, and Kenya. From a technology perspective, I think the most excitement across the board is definitely now in agri-tech. And I think agri-tech, because we've been talking about for the last years the importance for the continent to reach food production sustainability. And not only the importance for the continent to reach that, but also the continent's ability to do so. And so agri-tech, especially when we look at the founders today, the excitement and engagement we're seeing around agri-tech is nothing like any other sector. When we look at our pipeline, especially in some of those markets, we see a growth in companies that are building either sustainable solutions for farming, even now more so also contributing to financing farming, and also thinking about IoT as a predominant way to create basically clean farming. So on the agri-tech space, I think that from an investment perspective, it's something that we're seeing, but there is another interesting layer to that also comes around mobility. And mobility because, as some of you know, the continent has its fair share of challenges around mobility. And when we've talked about the position of clean tech within mobility, that used to be a completely foreign concept altogether. And when we see the pipeline of companies that we have today, we are now increasingly seeing that EV is becoming actually a topic on the continent. We're also seeing that batteries and battery production is also becoming a tech topic. But ultimately, I think for us, especially from an investor perspective, we really believe in the fact that innovation is driven by the interest of founders. So we don't force certain sectors or thesis on founders, because entrepreneurship is hard enough that it's important that founders are building something that they believe in and something that they're truly passionate and interested about. And so what we do from a trend perspective is we follow the founders. Where are the founders going to? Where are their interests in terms of these technologies? Where are their skills and their ability to develop? And that's how we define those trends.
Thank you very much. But now looking maybe more precisely in the textile sector, Nancy, what do you see talking to people? Do the people in Kenya, do they care about sustainability in the textile sector? And do people see the economic opportunities in there, be it for a job opportunity, be it for creating a company, for investing in it? Is it seen as an opportunity or more like an obligation, something we have to do?
Okay, thank you. In Kenya, like across the value chain, there's been interest in sustainability. We can start with for example, fiber stage, cotton growing. Now there's an interest on organic farming so that it becomes more environmentally friendly. Although it's a bit ambitious, because as much as it's environmentally friendly, it may not be necessarily economically viable for the farmers. So in that area, yes, there might be a lot of interest, but then is it really completely sustainable? And then when we move now to the companies, there is a lot of interest, especially in renewable energy sources for manufacture, particularly solar energy, because of the challenges with the cost of electricity and also because of the abundant sunlight that they can take advantage of. But the same scenario again comes in the cost of setup of those renewable energy methods. So as much as there is a lot of interest in the sustainability, is it completely viable right now? If we are being realistic and we are really saying, do we want to move that direction? What do we need to do to ensure that even as we are doing all these practices, everyone is benefiting across the value chain? So that's one thing. And then in terms of eco-innovation strategies, besides the renewable energy, we are also considering looking at areas of recycling, upcycling, the use of recycled fibers from the beginning, which also brings us again to the same problem, like now getting something that is completely sustainable, that will have good social impact, economic impact, and environmental impact is still a bit of a challenge right now, but the interest is there.
It's very good to know. So there is interest, but like everywhere else, I think the same question we ask ourselves in Estonia is it just, is it approachable to everyone, and can, because otherwise we can't do it, right?
Yes.
On scale at least. But Robin, looking at your some years of experience in African countries, what have you seen change? And given that you're also in a quite regulated area of business, how have you seen the national objectives and regulation evolve in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I think the biggest change has been in my own mindset, actually. But because, well, seeing in the beginning going to Africa, thinking that it's quite difficult to get farmers to adopt some change, adopt more sustainable soil-friendly practices. But the truth is actually that it's even more difficult for us to promote these practices in Europe, because it seems almost like African farmers feel the climate change more than European farmers, and also improving the soils is improving their production more compared to Europe as well. So warm climate, there is enough moisture, well, depending on the region, but where we operate, so it's fairly fast. The soil regeneration happens really fairly fast, and can already quickly give some productivity gains to African farmers as well. And that's the biggest change for, in our mindset at e-agronomy, is that we see that it's not only the carbon income that we are bringing to farmers, but it's mainly helping them to increase their yields and making more stable if there are extreme weather conditions. For example, there is long dry periods, and etc. That has been the biggest change that we have seen.
Well, that's very good to hear. Maybe I will come back a bit to the financial perspective of things. So we see that there is a wish and drive to build the green economy, but there are definitely a lot of challenges. So from a financing perspective, what are the main barriers holding back the development of a sustainable economy right now in Africa?
I think the first thing we observe in a lot of the businesses that are more green tech affiliated on the continent today is that a lot of them are, especially today, they are basically relying on government subsidies to be able to survive. And that's a big issue around creating these businesses to be sustainable. Because especially on the continent, we see that there is a lot of instability around governments. And so the companies that rely on these subsidies, I mean, we see a lot of them who basically can be out of business over a day or another, because they don't currently have the business model that allow these companies to be reliable outside of these government subsidies. So I think that's definitely one of the first challenges. The second one is that we actually don't, when we think about the capital pool, we mix up equity investment as being the primary driver of sustainable technology. So when we think about the capital that these companies need, we think that all of it has to come from investors. But that's not true. The reality is that the capital really has to be divided in three pools. The first pool is the R&D pool, which is the research and development capital that they need to actually be able to figure out how the technology works. And that allows them to have the time to do the research, the time to do tests, the time to actually be able to produce something that can go on the market. And then you have the second part, which is the equity capital, which comes from investors like ourselves who believe in their technology and are funding them in order for them to take it out to market. And then you now have the third part of the capital pool, which is the working capital. And that's the debt and basically the loan part, which is the working capital that they now need to start scaling and inject more capital to get their products out. So if you think about those three buckets, one, on the continent today, obviously all three are very low in terms of their availability. number one, which is R&D, is even lower, probably non-existent in a lot of markets. And then number three is very, very difficult to access for them because banks are not going to give them those loans or those debt packages. So today, the reality is that even though some of their technologies might be sustainable, on the financial part, it's not. And until we can figure out a way to make it financially sustainable, we are actually not bringing any value back to the continent. And that's the harsh truth, but it is the truth. Because if the farmers, if the business owners, if the employees are not actually able to make a living from the technologies that they're putting out in these markets, then are we actually solving for them, or are we solving from a perspective of an idea instead of reality?
It's very interesting. Actually, I would like to hear what Nancy has to think about it, because if financing R&D is one of the main barriers, yet you manage to do it. And I hear that you have partnerships with the Estonian university, but probably with more global universities and more European research institutions. How does this collaboration help you? In what ways? Is it access to financial resources? Is it access to experience? What do these collaborations give you?
First, of course, is the financial aspect. So you find most of what we do in the universities, we apply for research grants from large organizations that offer funding for that. But also within that collaboration, there is knowledge transfer. So between two parties, we gain knowledge from them, they also gain knowledge from them, and then there's also strengthening of relationships. So as much as the financial aspect is important, but then also the additional knowledge that we gain from that. And also even in terms of research, some institutions have got resources that we don't have. So when we need equipment for certain aspects, then we can work with other institutions. And then we also have some resources that those institutions don't have. So some people can come to Kenya because they need a particular plant for some green technology that they're doing. And then we take that plant back to their lab, we do the research from that side, and at the end of the day, it's a win-win for everyone.
That's very good to hear. And Robin, of course, you're looking at the barriers you would like to expand your activities and your partnerships in African countries. What would help you go even further? Is it some sort of bilateral agreements between countries or multilateral? What is holding back, and what could be done to improve your business development?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, what helped us to get started in the first was also Estonian government, Estonian climate ministry subsidy to enter Tanzania. And the main thing was that when we speak to venture capital funds, mainly in Europe, then they like our expansions in Spain or in Poland or in Sweden. But always if they see that, oh, you're expanding in Africa as well, they see this as a risk and don't want to necessarily to put their money on the table on that. So this grant helped us to get started and to prove that we can do sustainable business and profitable business in Africa. But what will help us to go further is that, well, beside our own activities, is to have a stable business environment. Obviously, at the same time, we need changes, we need the progress and so on, but some fundamentals should stay the same, and there should be this kind of stability to operate in the region.
Very interesting. I'm looking at the time that's running dangerously fast as always. It's been very interesting talking to you, and I've really gained that insight to where the barriers are, what we could be doing to kind of alleviate them. But maybe just to, before we end, what would be your wish if you had one wish to make for the sustainable economy development in Africa in the coming years? What's your wish? Who wants to start?
Okay, I can start. Mine is more, of course, there's been a lot of educational and awareness to everyone, but then I feel like It's more around the people who understand the language of sustainability. Previous speakers have talked about the barriers in language and communication. So I wish that we could go deeper and access everyone from whatever level they are at. Because now there's a lot of talk about the expanded producer responsibility, but I wish it could also go all the way to expanded consumer responsibility. And the consumers are the people out there, the ones that don't really fully understand this language of sustainability. So we can do a lot of work from our level, but if we don't reach out to the grassroots, to the communities down there, then we won't make much progress. That's my wish. Thank you.
Thank you.
My wish would be for these businesses and these models to be financially sustainable. I think it's incredibly important that we think about the communities and the grassroots members who are the ones who are on the receiving end of a lot of the work that we do. And if those people are not able to make a living from some of these directions, policies, innovations that we're putting out in the market, then for me, we're missing the point. So it's really for us to go back to those who are at the bottom chain and create value for them.
Thank you, Mariam.
In Kenya, we met the farmer. Well, he's a farmer, but he has every week group of farmers visiting his farm and center, where he's showing about practices that help to reduce the cost of fertilizers, helps to produce food more sustainably, in the sense that the yield is more stable. And I just hope that we will find a way to scale these kinds of operations all around, well, Kenya and then abroad as well. His work is amazing.
Thank you, dear panelists, for this amazing discussion we had. And I really have hope and faith as well after this panel that the sustainable economy in Africa and in partnerships between African and European countries in Estonia are going to get even faster and bigger in the coming years. Thank you so much. And thank you for the audience as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.